The opinions and viewpoints expressed in .NET Rocks are not necessarily those of its sponsors, or of Microsoft Corporation, its partners, or employees. .NET Rocks is a production of Franklin's Net, which is solely responsible for its content. Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter. Rockheads, stop decorating your unit with attributes and listen up. It's time for another stellar episode of .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers with Carl Franklin and Rory Blythe. This is Jeff Maciolik here to announce show number 67 with guests John Alexander and Barry Gervin, recorded live Thursday, June 10th. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter, and now offering hands-on VB.NET and ASP.NET classes remotely. Online at www.franklins.net. And by Data Dynamics, makers of ActiveReports.net. Simple, powerful, and cost-effective reporting for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.datadynamics.com. And by Dundas Chart for .NET. Advanced technology, advanced results. Online at www.dundaschart.com. Support is also provided by Code Magazine, Microsoft Technologies in-depth for IT managers and developers. Online at www.code-magazine.com. And now, the man who was once told by a French waiter, "No, you cannot put ketchup on the chicken," Carl Franklin.
Oh, very good. That was for you, Rory.
No, you cannot put ketchup on the chicken.
You stupid idiot. Why don't we just bring the Cool Whip and we can spread it all over the floor for you?
What do you expect me to do? Go deep fry ding dong and put it up the duck's bottom?
When would you just like the cheese whiz on your coco vin? You stupid idiot.
Stupid American. Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of unsophisticated, you know.
How you doing,
That's
man?
all right, though. You know, I got to tell you, I'm sitting here. We just made a drive all the way out to the boonies, and we picked up the universe's cutest living organism and brought it back to our apartment. We just got a long-haired Chihuahua pup, 12 weeks old.
Yeah.
And it's so incredibly adorable. I'm really not able to handle it. I mean, I'm trying to talk to you right now.
So
but
does
I'm
it do the
watching him
Peter
sniff my
Lorre
weights.
kind of Taco Bell thing? You know, when you're not watching,
No,
there's a
he
towel at the moon
doesn't
and
talk
go,
yet. No.
Oh, no? No.
No, he doesn't talk yet. But
chalupa. Yeah.
no, but he is really adorable. I just can't even believe it. I can't even look at him right now.
What's his
look
name?
The other way. We haven't decided on a name yet. Corey wants to call him Castro, and I wanted to call him Little Pecker, but we haven't really.
Well, both of those actually work, you know, if you think about it. Castro, you know.
Yeah. You didn't say the other one, though. You said they both work, and then you just mentioned the first one.
Well,
that
Castro
Corey
is
wanted.
see, the Little Pecker is obvious, but Castro takes a little more sophistication to understand that one, so I had to explain it.
Yeah, aside from that, you know, it's been a good week. I've been watching The Office. Have you heard of The Office?
The Office, no. Is this a new reality show or something?
No. It's this BBC comedy that's kind of done in the same style as Spinal Tap, except that
cool.
instead of being about a rock band or something, it's about corporate life.
Rory, I have to ask you, did you find out about this because of me? Did I tell you about The Office?
No.
I thought
Hey,
A lot
did
of
we
people have
ask
been telling
you-
me to
Hey,
watch The
shut up,
Office.
Carl. Come on. I thought I was
Whoa.
the only person who'd heard of The Office, and this is like a big shock. It's like,
Huh.
you know, it's like, hey, Rory, did you hear about that? And like, I named some article of clothing that's in your closet and you've never told anybody.
Wow.
about.
Hey Jeff. There's this country called England, and they all know about The Office.
All right, I'll
All
go
right,
back
well.
in the sound room.
You're like that guy with the club shirt. Oh, I saw them first. Yeah, real cool, man. Look,
Okay.
a lot of people know about. Yeah, okay, a lot of people know about The Office. Not so much over here, but it's catching on. And it's sort of like halfway between a reality show and a scripted show. And what's really, really eerie about it, actually, is how accurate it is. It's just like corporate life. And that's really what's so funny about it.
Wow.
It's so sleazy and so nasty and just, well, I'm not going to see too much about it, but it's worth watching.
We'll have to check that
so
out.
That's That's been my week. What's going on with you?
Oh, well, this week I got a class going on here. I got 2 of my students in the class here. They're hanging out and cheering us on. Yeah. And, yeah.
Was that them, or were you actually imitating them cheering us on?
I was recording, actually. I was playing on a laptop in the corner. So that was them, actually. Yeah. Carl, go for laugh.
I don't know how
no
low
get.
we sync. I mean, I don't know.
So it's been a good week. Actually, Epicurean delight here. They've been blown away by the food, and this is something we've been pushing lately, but it hasn't changed since we started doing the class. We take you out to lunch at some great places. So the fish tacos at Zavala were absolutely awesome.
You went to Zavala today. Cool.
No, we went to Russell's Ribs today, but yesterday we had these fish tacos at Zavala, crispy corn tortillas with fish and spicy stuff. Oh man, they were insane. Yeah, Zavala. So we got some mail. We don't get too much mail, Rory, this week, but we did get a couple. And one, we're going to have to bleep this. This is pretty bad.
Okay.
This one came from Don Krala, Krhla. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Don, but anyway. He says, I hear you talk about X1 a lot on DNR. I was wondering something. I'm pretty sure no, but anytime I see the word gator on a website, I go into convulsions. X1 is in no way, shape, or form associated with the, and this is hyphenated, with the God, I hate that piece of shit, whoever came up with it should die a long, slow, painful gonorrhea, polio, Parkinson's death gator, right? I figure, this is the best part. I figure for $99 it couldn't be, but I know that son of a bitch gator could sneak into the ass of a 120-year-old without detection. I love DNR, Dan K. Yeah, that's saying bleep me all over it, didn't it?
Yeah.
And we had another one. This one from a guy who we know, Robert Cartwell from the Los Alamos National Laboratory. He says, hey, Carl and Rory, thanks for the great shows. The long drives I have here in New Mexico, I live in Santa Fe and work in Los Alamos, go by much quicker with all the info, laughs, and tunes from .NET Rocks, especially like Carl Prothman and Scott Hanselman. There you go, boys. I was wondering if you would consider addressing the topic of project management in one of your shows. Well, we all should be doing it, and I'm curious as to what our practical approach is, especially for teams of, say, greater than 5. I'm not talking XP, but all the traditional stuff from requirements, design, review, quality assurance, issue tracking, change control, configuration management. Project management versus being a cowboy. By the way, I'm the wheelchair guy from Tech Ed. Wouldn't mind if you gave me a shout out during one of the shows. Well, sorry, we're not going to do that, so we'll just you'll have to settle for that. Oh, come on.
What's up?
What's up? How you doing, man? So that was a nice surprise, but that was about it for the mail. Wasn't too much happening.
I think he's right. I think that would make for a good show, because I know that on Chris Sell's off-topic list, every few months there's like a project management thread that just goes on and on and on and on.
Right.
So there's definitely a desire to talk about this stuff.
And we just got a taste of the team system too. So we'll, as people get more experience with that, we'll definitely talk about it some more. And, sort of what we're talking about tonight, unit testing, and that has a lot to do with this. So, but that's another thing. And so without any further ado, I guess now is the time in the show when we do a little segment we like to call the Google Weirdos.
Weirdos.
And if you don't know what the Google Weirdos are, check out the link on our website. So there you go. So Rory,
much easier this week.
What are the shouts outs this week?
Okay, the shouts outs this week. The first one is, Rory Blythe, would you please explain what Google Weirdos is all about?
We didn't set that up. That just happened, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. No, we're not getting it. So the next one is, Rory Blythe, this is Google. Stop making fun of my weirdos or else. The next one is a little weird. It's if you hear a little bit of yipping in the background, that's our new Chihuahua. By the way, I
thought that you were stepping on a balloon. Actually,
no, that's the Chihuahua. So the next one is, I think I should stop sending the Rory Blythe P.S. I am the guy saying the gay monkey thing. I don't know what any of that
What's
means.
that all about? Gay monkey
I really
thing?
don't know what that guy's talking about.
I don't remember. I don't know what that's in reference to. Seriously.
The next one, this is one of those nice ones. Rory Blythe is a liberal bastard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You know, you tell a few people you think gay marriage is okay and you want to give everybody equal rights, and all of a sudden you're a bastard. I don't know how that works, but that's cool.
Oh, well.
Whatever. Next one is, hey, Rory, what disease do you have this week? So that's pretty good. And I've actually got one. I've got a new one for you.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, so I've actually got this new disease because it turns out that the medication that I'm taking for my facial numbness and to prevent the arterial spasming in my brain is also a medication which is implicated in clinical depression. But doctors don't tell you this before they put you on it because it doesn't affect everybody. And they
Wait a minute. Does it make you depressed or does it cure depression?
Yes, it makes you depressed.
You're kidding.
And
So that's why you left New London, you bastard.
Well, no, you know what? It actually might be part of the reason I had a hard time there. I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
Because I've been kind of listless and sort of apathetic and everything, and it's been since I started this drug. So although I can feel my face again, I can't feel my heart.
Aww. Everybody give me a big aww.
Or puke or whatever, you know.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so that
Fingers
kind of
down the
sucks.
throat.
I'm actually going to be getting off that stuff, seeing my neurologist in a couple weeks. Next one is Rory Blythe will die before he uses Linux. Jeff, could you jump in here and get my back on this?
Yeah, let's defend Rory.
Rory has a shell account on my server.
What's up?
That being said, let me check his bash history.
I think you'll be surprised. Jeff.
Hang on, let's see.
You will be very surprised.
Let's see if I'm still proficient enough to figure this out. Well, let's see. Let's do sudo cat/home/Rory.
Bunch of nerds.
/dot bash.
You know, on Windows, you could have just clicked a couple things.
Yeah, really.
No.
Where's the right?
I'm catting
Find
your,
the button, man.
I'm catting your history. Oh, wow. You did a bunch of stuff. No, wait.
See?
No, you didn't.
Well, I mean, it looks like I did
come
that, right?
on.
So
You
moving on.
You typed netstat. Come on.
You logged on, type netstat.
I just want to see what was going on.
Yeah,
I went on there and I did a who to see if you were online so we could chat, and you weren't online, okay?
Anywho.
You hooed about 6 or 7 times.
So the next shouts out is, I can't wait for .NET Rocks Live today, Rory Blythe. Finally, I can watch it. That is one disappointed listener out there.
I've read this on many occasions that people will email me and said, I really got to get up there and watch it. And wow, that just well, you know what? It might be that it's just so imaginative that you get such a sharp image in your mind that that's what they're talking about. I don't know. Then again, they could be smoking crack, or so could we. For that matter.
That's the shouts out.
Are you frying the dog in the background there, or what is that?
No, that's the sink.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of puppy prep here. We gotta
gotcha.
get the dog integrated with life. So that's the shouts out. So here we go with the real Google weirdos.
The true Google weirdos.
The first one, somebody just searched for animal butts.
Okay.
You can probably just find that inside of like a 6-piece chicken McNugget meal or something. It's like it's the little red dangly and a bunch of rooster butts. That's all they stick in there.
You were talking about your experience at Russell's Ribs, right?
Russell's Ribs? No,
pork butt. Yeah.
Pork butt? It's disgusting.
Never mind.
So the next
it's a food, man.
You eat that?
You vegetarian bastard.
No, do you eat pork butt?
Pork butt, yes.
That's so gross. Okay, that's really gross. Okay,
it's incredible. Are you kidding?
So the next
one is...
Guys,
help me out here. Isn't pork like barbecued pork butt?
Silence.
Jeez.
So the next one is men born with ovaries. And they're actually called women. So, yeah, it's kind of how that works. Yeah. Next one, and we might have to do a little bit of bleeping here. We got a bleep here right in the middle. So I'm warning you, okay? There's some sensitive language in this one. Just close the ears. Put the kids to bed real quick. You got 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. He's a nutbag. Just because the fucker's got a library card, it doesn't make him Yoda.
What?
That was a Google search.
Yeah.
Next one is, there is, if you don't mind my saying so, something sinister about men who avoid wine games, the company of charming women, and good dinner table conversation.
Jeez. Get a life, man.
The next one is, I let men look at me in public restrooms.
Okay.
So I guess George Michael's out there Googling and stuff. The next one is, how do Americans feel about outsourcing from India? From India. I didn't even realize that actually when I wrote this down. But I mean, we could always rephrase this. It's like, how do Americans feel about losing their jobs and their health care and their income and their houses?
Yeah, really.
Well,
like India has anything to do with it, right?
It's not India, yeah. It's just outsourcing in general.
Yeah.
India is just like the catch-all nation for this stuff.
Of the day.
Next one is, I'm 20 and get spankings. That's one of those Google confessional booth searches. And the last one is,
Google Confessions.
How can you make a male's nipples longer? Probably a car and some dental floss, tied to the bumper there.
Oh, man, you're insane.
So that is the Google oh my God, the sweet puppy is at my feet. Okay, that's the Google Weirdos for the week. Weirdos.
So, Rory, our guests today, two guests, both happen to be regional directors, John Alexander and Barry Gervin. John is a recognized Microsoft certified trainer and Microsoft certified solution developer, and has served as the regional director for the Kansas City region for the last 5 years. Gesundheit. And as the .NET practice manager at Vision Data Solutions, an industry leader in developing enterprise solutions, John is experienced in the delivery of scalable, stable, and open enterprise-level .NET web applications. In addition, does it really sound like I'm just sort of rambling this off the top of my head? In addition, John has written Microsoft official curriculum and speaks at industry conferences such as VBITS, VB Connections, and Developer Days. And Barry Gervin is a principal consultant and instructor with Object Sharp. He's a technical leader with over 15 years' experience helping development teams design and build large software projects. Barry is skilled in the architecture, design, and development of databases and distributed systems. Barry is also a Microsoft regional director, and he is in the Toronto, Ontario area. Hey, guys, what's up?
Hey, this is my first.
Excellent. Your first what?
My first radio show.
No kidding.
Cool.
Mine too.
Yeah, that dog's got to go, man.
Yeah, we're moving him to the other room.
Okay.
It's my first internet radio show with a chihuahua in the background.
Mine too, okay?
You never know what you'll hear on .NET Rocks.
That's true. So John, your bio left out your books. You've written a couple books, or you've worked on a couple books.
Yeah, I've written 2 books on .NET around Visual Basic .NET. One is designed more for Visual Basic 6 developers trying to move to ASP.NET. It's published by Wiley Press.
Yeah.
And the other one is published by Microsoft Press, and that with another RD, Ken Spencer.
Uh-huh.
And that's around building reusable components with Visual Basic .NET. So we walk through an entire kind of design kind of a framework and then put it all together for a fictional HR site.
Hey, you had some great comments out on Amazon.com. I went out and I looked and saw what people were saying, and
they say your
really
book doesn't totally suck. So that's a good Amazon comment, you know.
Yeah, I wrote a couple books too, and I lived by Amazon comments for a while, and man, you just can't go there.
Yeah, you kind of watch it for the first month, like the stock market, you know.
Right, it's true. But
anytime you give somebody an anonymous way to comment on anything,
right,
it's trouble. Yeah.
And Billy Hollis also worked with you on this ASP.NET book.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, Billy and I did the first book called Developing Web Apps with Visual Basic .NET and ASP.NET, and Billy did about half that book with me, and we had a great time doing it. So Billy Hollis is the Nashville RD regional director.
The National Regional. Oh,
Nashville.
I'm sorry,
Nashville, Tennessee.
Yep. We've had him on the show a couple of times. Good guy. So you're all about. So let me just start off this way with my Andy Rooney impersonation. You ready for this?
Sure. Great.
So what is a unit anyway, and why does it need to be tested? What do you think? Is that good?
That was great.
That's not bad.
I'm spellbound now.
Yeah.
Who was that? Was that Rory?
No, that was me.
Yeah, I can't really do impressions. I'm bad.
He does a good Chihuahua, though.
He does do a great Chihuahua. So anyway, getting back to unit testing.
So let's introduce that topic.
Let's do. Basically, unit testing is part of something called test-driven development. And some people call that test-first programming or test-first development. And so basically what it is that you it forces you to kind of break up your programming into really small parts. And basically, you think about what you want to do, and then you think about what the output should be of whatever you're trying to test. Usually it's a function. And then you write a test to prove that, and then you write the code for it.
Okay.
So you write the test first, and obviously that test is going to fail, and then you write the code to make the test work.
Oh, okay. That's why they call it test-driven, because the
That's
test
right.
comes before the code.
Right. And there's a couple of major views of test-driven development out in the world. And one of those, and actually the guy that developed one of the major test-driven development automated testing tools called NUnit, Jim Newkirk, kind of says that test-driven development's goal is more like thinking through your specification and kind of thinking through your design before you write your functional code. And then other people think of it as more like a programming technique itself. So you're using that to really design and build your programs at the same time. Okay. And so I think, you can go either way with that, but either way, what it's trying to do is to get you to clean code that really works.
Yeah.
Instead of just writing a big, huge bunch of code and then God help you when you start testing it. Oh, there's another bug. There's one over there.
We should also probably say that NUnit didn't just get created in a vacuum. That
no, not at all.
JUnit.
Not at all. It's a port from a family of tests called XUnit testing tools, and JUnit was the first one, and it was written to start this out in the Java programming language.
Right.
And it was done with a bunch of people putting it together.
Wasn't there a derivative of that in Smalltalk before Java?
Probably, actually,
yeah.
I believe so.
I think that's where it came
back
from.
In,
his
absolutely. Would have done some Smalltalk test harnesses anyway, and a lot of people have called these X units prior to them being calling NUnit or JUnit or whatever test harnesses. Just simple code. And to be fair to the methodology of test first coding and NUnit or separating them is that you don't actually have to write your test first. And probably people kind of evolved. They kind of started just writing test harnesses for existing code. To call the function, check.
I was going to say, this was my MO when I was began writing software, where most of the people I knew who were developing software had a spec and they wrote the whole thing. They got every line of code, theoretically, supposedly ready to work, and then they'd go and run the thing and find the bugs. Whereas me, I would develop one function at a time and then call that function and see if it worked. And I mean, it's not test driven because I didn't write the calling code first, But
yeah, you're doing the same thing, though. You're testing the code and testing it in small chunks and verifying that it's actually working before you move to the next thing, right?
Yeah, it's just that there isn't a tool. I didn't use a tool.
Well, the reason for using the tool, of course, is you can have this whole suite of tests that test all of your code, at least the public interface to all your code. And then if you decide to change something, if you have like tests for everything, you can, and you get to, your second or third iteration and you say, well, you know what, we should have written that object a little bit differently, or, it should have had an ancestor, or it should be using this other helper class instead of doing all the work itself. You can totally refactor your code and run the tests and make sure your public objects and methods still work the way you expected them. So you can totally rip everything apart, run your tests when you're done and go, oh, okay, it all works.
Yeah, basically the one of the powers of this is that no matter which way you go, either you write the test on the front end or the back end, you have this suite of tests that build as you build your app. And so as you change or as you grow your app, each time you make a change, you can run all those tests again and verify that you haven't screwed anything up.
So let's put some meat on the bones here for the listeners whose interests we've piqued. So the NUnit testing tool, what does this do? Does it generate the testing code automatically based on the functions?
No, it's a framework that you utilize, and it comes with a.
So give me a typical walkthrough of how I would do this.
Okay, well, say for example you were gonna build a project, and the first thing you might do, if you're building a class, is you'd want to create a test that just shows that the class is there. Okay. So you'd start out and you'd import your after you downloaded NUnit and everything, obviously, you'd import your NUnit framework into a class.
Oh, into the code that you're testing.
You could do it that way, but normally people will create a separate class for the test itself.
Interesting.
And you have several different pieces of this framework. One's called the test fixture, and that's the heart, really, of the test. And so anyway, you build this test fixture, and you use an assert statement to test the class. Well, after you build that fixture inside of your test suite, if you will, you have a suite of tests. You build your app, and then you can run. The way NUnit works is then you run NUnit and point it to your DLL, and through reflection, it goes out and grabs your tests and runs them through the code, or runs them through the NUnit test harness.
So, all right. So basically, I'm hearing you right. If I'm hearing you right, you're saying I import the test, the NUnit stuff into my class, and then I just load up the class in NUnit, and it magically just.
Yeah, you build the class first into a DLL.
Okay.
And you load up the DLL. You point NUnit to the DLL.
Right.
And then it runs those test fixtures. And if you're using the GUI, it'll give you a green that says, yeah, the test ran, or a red that says, no, it didn't, or a yellow to say there was no coverage or the test was ignored.
Okay.
Actually, in prior versions in the initial versions of NUnit and prior XUnit derivatives, you'd actually have to create your test fixtures inherited from another class, like a test fixture base. And then, so what would happen is when NUnit loaded up your assembly, and your assembly would typically have just your tests in it, your test fixture classes. It would use reflection or whatever the development platform's technique for doing that is called.
Right.
And it would say, I have all these classes that are marked as text fixtures, and then those text fixture classes, they would all contain methods, and those methods, those public methods, with a given signature would be recognized as tests. So it actually lists them out in the GUI. It's saying, here's a list of tests under each of these classes. And then, you just hit, there's like a play button on the NUnit console on the GUI. And it iterates through all of those methods in your class, executing them. And, unless something is detected that's wrong, you get a green circle on that test to say, hey, that test passed.
But I guess the key is you don't have to write the code to call the functions. That's what it does.
Yeah, you don't call the code to call your tests.
Yeah.
Right.
Your test has code in it that calls your class, your base class that you want to test.
And then it'll color code you with shapes or whatever if it failed. Or
and the way you tell the console, the GUI console, the NUnit console that there's a problem is you have this assert class, and you say assert that this is true, and you give it some Boolean expression that you expect, like the class is not a null reference, or the function returned 10, or whatever you have, whatever you expect. And as long as those asserts are true, then the whole test shows up as green.
Cool. So are there other tools out there besides NUnit? I know that we've talked about the team system, which has some testing stuff in it, but for example, have you heard of this SOAP tester, Parasoft's for web service testing?
WebKey, I think it's called like WebKing or something like that.
That's a different one. I'm thinking of Parasoft's tool, but
Parasoft's got one called .test.
Right. That's the one I'm familiar with as well.
Okay. I was thinking of the SOAP tester they have for web services.
I'm going to guess what that's like. I'm familiar, or maybe you can jump on it. But okay. .test is an interesting tool. You don't actually write the tests.
Okay.
It looks at your classes, your business components, and the methods on them, and then it just fires sort of random data based on some algorithms that it has to see that they don't pooch entirely. And they have some patterns for certain types of methods and certain types of components. And you can change the algorithms about how it goes about testing things. And actually one of the neat things about that tool is that all the tests that it generates, which are really just kind of some smoke testing, is that it will actually export those as NUnit tests if you want. Their .test product, which is pretty neat. And then you can go and edit them and tweak them however you want.
So I've got a question along some slightly different lines. Whenever I'm talking to people about unit testing, the one thing that I usually wonder about is where does this fit into the overall testing scenario or QA scenario, right? I mean, is this something where you have to have XP methodologies like in your workplace to make use of it, to make sense of it, or is this something that you can just incorporate into your existing system and get some benefit up from?
XP as a methodology pretty much relies on this as part of its methodology, because you don't really write any specs up front. If you do test first coding as part of XP, which is kind of what it implies, you really need a tool for automating these tests.
I'm thinking more, though, about shops that aren't actually XP shops, where you have more traditional, you write the code, you pass it on to the QA department, the QA department goes through it, they pass it back, they file some bug reports, and you're doing everything according to a spec, and so on and so forth. I mean, I've seen unit testing used in this situation.
Absolutely. The idea is that a developer has a spec, and how do they know they've met the spec on building a component? Is they write an in-unit test, and they can prove it to the world, say, hey, my test ran.
Right, and there's another really the level of tests that you're talking about, Rory, really is something called either customer tests or acceptance tests. Sure. At that point, where you run your unit tests to make sure that the code functionally works, and then you use a tool like the Fit tool or Fitness, which allows you to code up what you expect as a user, what you expect the input to look like, and run it to make sure that it's validating based on what the user or the QA department expects.
Okay.
Cool. Well, it is my extreme pleasure to introduce to you a new sponsor for .NET Rocks, and I'm talking about Dundas Charts. And these guys make chart controls for ASP.NET and for Windows Forms applications. 100% managed code. Let me just lay on some features here for you, and then I'll give you some great testimonials from their customers, some of whom you already know. Great features. 100% fully managed code, great-looking charts. They can render in a bunch of formats, including Flash and SVG animation. Full object-oriented design, as I said, 100% managed code, no pinvoke, no ActiveX. They're fully integrated into Visual Studio with full IntelliSense. You can get just about 99% of everything you need in 2 or 3 lines of code. Drag, drop, boom, bam, you got your charts. Of course, if you're into customization, you can customize to your heart's content. These are not just static charts, they're controls, so they're interactive. Some have scroll bars, some have little sliders that you can move up and down. You have really cool things like animation, you have splines, you've got scrolling and 3D, 2D, this D, that D, just anything that you can think of in charts, they've got it. So the key to enjoying and understanding Dundas Chart is to go up to their website and download a fully functional evaluation copy. This isn't something that's going to blow up or stop working after a while. It's fully functional. The only caveat is they've got their watermark across the graph. Other than that, you can do everything that you can do with the release version. Fully functional. And now let me tell you about some of their customers. Microsoft uses Dundas Charts for .NET technology and SQL Server 2000 reporting services. CompuWare uses Dundas Chart technology within Dev Partner Studio. NetIQ uses it. Siemens uses it. Check out this quote from Ben Haraway at Siemens. Overall, Dundas Chart for .NET was a blessing. From the free trial to the easy installation, exceptional documentation and examples, great output and customization ability, and then the icing on the cake, helpful and persistent support staff. We were very happy with every aspect from Dundas, and there is no doubt we will look to them for solutions in the future. Jonathan Goodyear from angrycoder.com says, the first thing that struck me as I dropped the Dundas chart control onto a web page for the first time was the clean, well-done wizard that immediately popped up. Chris Sells says, not only was the Dundas chart more than full-featured enough, but the documentation was definitely geared toward getting a charting newbie started fast. John Maver from CompuWare Corp says, I don't think I could imagine a better experience with a third-party vendor. Brian Welker from Microsoft says, our developers like the fact that they have full control over the chart features through a well-designed managed code API. And when we interviewed Stephen Forte on .NET Rocks, a long time ago now, he told us about an application he wrote for Zagat Online Survey. He did their website. He redid their whole website and used Dundas everywhere. And he made a point of saying on that show how excellent these charts were, and that was back then. It was a couple of years ago. So here's the deal. Go up to www.dundaschart.com. That's DUNDAS chart.com. Download a free evaluation copy. Tell them Carl sent you, and rock and roll with charts. Dundas Charts. Advanced technology, advanced results. You mentioned extreme programming, or XP, a bit. And didn't Kent Beck, one of the fathers of XP, have something to do with NUnit?
No, NUnit was written, or I think ported from JUnit by Jim Newkirk.
Okay.
Charlie Poole.
There's just a quote from Kent Beck on the NUnit.org website, so I thought there was some connection there.
He the predecessors in JUnit and the Smalltalk.
Yeah, he was more with JUnit and Smalltalk. That's right.
I see. Cool. Well, and of course, I'm just trying to. You guys are zooming in a bit. I want to zoom out. The whole idea, if I hadn't said it already, to reiterate, the whole idea with this is to make code that doesn't fail. And is there any studies or any documentation that's been done, or any studies or case studies that prove that test-driven development is more rock solid than your typical methodologies?
Yeah, actually, there have been a couple of studies done. I don't have them right here in front of me. One, I believe, was out of Calgary, which is up by Barrie up there, and basically showed that test-driven development, utilizing folks that really hadn't had any main experience with TDD, was really effective in building some of the test software that they had in the study. Or I should say the test case software they had in the study.
Do you know if it has a tendency to lengthen developer cycles or shorten them, or if it has any effect?
That's a good point. I really do find that in early stages, test-driven development, or actually it's not even test-driven. I mean, just automating your unit tests takes longer.
Right.
But you've all seen this problem where you get to 90% of your project. The developers all say we're 90% of the project, and it takes half as long to get to that last 100%.
Right. Sure.
On projects that I've seen in unit testing, that last 10%, it takes 10%.
Right.
You don't get these gotchas. You're not fixing a bug and breaking something else, and not finding it out until it goes to the testers. I think one of the other important things to mention about NUnit testing is we're getting pretty componentized in our development. A few shops I'm working with, they have developers who they do nothing but develop data access layers. Other developers build business components, and other developers build UI, and other developers are building web services. How do you test a business component? If you're building a VB6, client server type of application, you run it, you type some stuff into a text box, you hit OK, and it does what you think it does.
Right.
But if you're building a component, you need to actually write some code to test it.
Sure.
So NUnit gives you a really good framework for putting that in there, so that's an asset after you've actually developed the code and the test is passed. You can keep running that test right out to the end of your project.
Well, and the other thing is, even after the end of your project, say, for example, you move on to a different project and somebody else takes over for you on maintenance, they have the suite of code tests right there that they can really see what the code is doing and what the intent of the code actually is supposed to be.
In the actual tests, all right, in the unit testing that I've been exposed to, and maybe I haven't seen it done like in an expert fashion at all, but the tests often seem a little bit contrived to me. Now, what I'm wondering about is where's the real benefit? It almost seems to me like the process might be even more valuable than the test itself, because it seems like the process might cause you to be a bit more vigilant about how you're putting everything together. It might cause you to be a little bit more aware of what's actually going on within your code, and just seeing the little green dot light up is sort of like icing on the cake. I mean,
I think that's the difference between test first coding and test last coding.
Right.
Test last coding, they write the component, they've got some methods on what they think they need in the component, and then they start testing. They're like, oh, okay, I put in two numbers, do they add up, whatever. And they seem a little contrived. One of the things you get with test first coding is that you don't think about the component and the entire public interface or what it's supposed to do or the implementation of it first. You think about the component you've got to develop from the consumer of it.
Yeah, that's a good
I've got
point.
an object, and this is what it should do. I mean, you've probably done this with the .NET framework. You've thought, I wonder how the XML serializer works. And, you just start looking at the methods, and you kind of figure out what it's supposed to do from the API. So you kind of think of your business component or your data access layer, wherever it is you're creating, and think of how I would use it, or what's the scenario I need to use it.
Everybody's done that, where they make a function that has 6 overloads, but you're really only interested in the first 3. And those last 3 overloads are just like, yeah, we'll get to those someday. You know, so you don't test them, and you just go ahead and code, and you don't even run all 6 overloads. You maybe just run your code against the first one, and then you just assume, oh well, those are just overloads. Those will be fine because they're less complex than the full overload that takes 9,000 parameters. So that's the only one I'm going to call, and. Yeah, so everybody's done that. So I guess, if I was doing this from a test-driven, I would have the tests for all 6 of those overloads, and then I would fill right in the code and run the test. So there's no way that the test isn't going to get run.
Right, and the point I think that Barry's trying to make is that when you have to write the test first, it forces you to think through the logic of the code itself.
Yeah.
And then after you write the test, the asserts that you want, is it, if you're doing like a listing of countries, or even if you're trying to do it with a database, what's the first step? Well, maybe I'm going to test my entity, and then I'm going to test, another entity. Okay, well then, gosh, what's the next step? Well, then I'm going to test the relationship.
I think that's what Rory was saying too. That it's more like the process of writing the test first forces you to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you get into that groove. And one of the ways you can start getting into that is you take a use case and you pretend you're the actor, and you write the code from the actor's perspective.
And there's probably a whole bunch of people who know nothing about what you're saying right now.
So use cases are one way of in plain English describing how a human or another system interacts with the thing that you're building.
Yeah.
The sort of inputs and the expected outputs, and it's really just
the
sequential.
Actors are the things involved, the calling code and the unit or whatever.
So it's usually like a 6. They're very happy day types of specs. So it's like I put in this 2 numbers, I get this result back, I add something else to it, I get this back. So you can almost walk through that and write an end unit test on the various steps. And that does 2 things. It makes you think about the actual component and how you write it. It actually documents your spec a lot more stringently than the English language is going to give people a lot more flexibility. And
were you guys at our Tech Ed BOF session where Bob Russellman showed up? He was actually on the show.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember the thing that he was talking about that just really kind of blew me away? Is that taking it from object design from a writer's perspective?
Mm-hmm.
He said you just
rigging a light and really trying to build a metaphor of the way that motion pictures are created versus the way.
Well,
software.
actually, that was cool too. But I was more thinking of how if you get a business person to write the use case down in clear, easy to understand English, you go through and you find the nouns, and those are the objects,
right?
And then you find the verbs, and those would be the methods.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the things that if you get back
really cool.
to XP, extreme programming, one of the ways that you start is that that you get somebody assigned to the project that really knows the business, and you sit with them and come up with the priorities of the features that they want, and then you just work through those and say, okay, as we build this, then we're really going to do this, and we're kind of branching off here, so forgive me, but we're going to, instead of taking all the features and planning them and developing them and stabilizing them, we'll take some of the features and pick a period, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, and do a build on that, estimate how much we're going to get done within 2 or 3 weeks, do the build on that, and show the user that, and then we move on and we just keep iterating that process that the user has working code through each build, and we just keep building on that. And then at any point in time, the user can take those list of features, or as in XP, they're called user stories, and change them around or decide, we really don't need that one at this time. And so with the whole test-driven development aspect, and then the short design and development cycles, users find that pretty compelling once they get into it.
Did XP get a bad rap?
Did XP get a bad rap?
Does XP get a bad rap?
Can I answer that? Can I ask that in a slightly different way, Carl? Because I think.
Sure.
I kind of have. I was just thinking about that exact thing, and I don't know if this is what you were thinking, but in terms of development, it seems like every couple of years or so we have like a new fad. We have a new thing that gets everybody really, really excited. Like XML was that for a while, and obviously we still need XML, and it's a very good thing, and it fits into our daily lives. But it's not the incredible thing that everybody was making it out to be, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at, Carl? Because that's kind of what I was wondering.
Well,
myself.
Sort of, but more specific. Yeah, I was thinking that sort of as a fad, but maybe I'm sort of thinking that there's more there, and that
right.
in the I talked to some people about XP, and there's some people whose opinions I respect say it's bullshit, it doesn't work, and I think that we've talked about it with other people on the show, but I really want to reiterate that certain aspects of XP, particularly pair programming, only work in certain circumstances, and I think that's what I'm getting at. That, but the XP in and of itself has far more techniques and processes to it than just pair programming, which is where you get two people on a set of on one code at one chair, one computer, and one looks over the other's back and over the other's shoulder, and there you go. So that's what I'm getting at. What do you think about that?
Well, Barry, you want to take that since I've been talking?
Sure. I think XP has failed some people, and I think part of the reason of that is they didn't accept it whole hog. They really used it more of an excuse not to do a lot of other things that they traditionally did, like writing a lot of upfront specs, doing UML class modeling, stuff that other methodologies that have questionable artifacts that are generated during the whole design and development process. And if you don't do complete unit testing with XP, it kind of fails, right? Because one of the things you get from that is a concept of being able to refactor mercilessly, being able to totally change my objects later on and how they're implemented, and not have to worry that my system's going to break because I've already got full tests on the public interface. So if you don't do the unit tests, you can't refactor mercilessly. And if you can't refactor mercilessly, then you're really forced in thinking about your objects to their full completion and what they really need to do throughout the entire life cycle. So one of the principles of XP is that you do the simplest thing that could possibly work. And when a developer tries to do that, he thinks, 4 iterations from now, I'm going to be able to need to do this, 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 and this, and I need this underlying plumbing in place. So you've done this, you've worked on a project, and you work for the first 6 months, and your application does nothing. What you're building is all this infrastructure and plumbing, and the idea behind XP is, look, forget about that. We can refactor our code and, totally change the internal implementation, create a class hierarchy later on, because we know we've got end-unit tests, and they're going to test everything. So we can totally change everything and not be worried about it. If you don't do the unit test, it all sort of breaks down. Paired programming is one of those things that, it's probably one of the things that you can drop out of XP the most easily without, wrecking the whole thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Another thing that I'd also say is that, developers like to code, period. And they don't really like specs. They just want to go. At the basic point, our fingers itch, right?
Oh, yeah,
and we
true.
just want to start going and going for it. But the thing is, XP has worked in some situations, maybe in some that it hasn't. And I really wasn't a believer until I got on a pretty large project, and we worked through a lot of interesting problems, and were able to overcome them by the unit testing, the short build cycles, so that we really always pretty much knew where the code was at any given point in time.
Well, John, contrary to what I just said before, the Mark and Joel, the guys that are in my class that are in here, their eyes lit up when I talked about pair programming. They've actually had some success with that. So let me just introduce you guys here. Go ahead. So you are
Mark Friedman.
Mark and Joel.
Joel Leitner.
Joel Leitner. All right. So you guys do pair programming together?
Yeah, we've been doing it for years. the thing I would say about it is that it's like any other kind of partnership, that some work and some don't.
Right.
We've been working together for a long time, and so we really know each other's styles and everything else, and we can work well together.
That's sort of what my impression was about pair programming, is that for certain personality types it works, and for others it's disastrous.
Right. It's like a marriage or a business partnership. Some people just can't partner, and they shouldn't try. So I think a lot of people have found failures, but it's like in any kind of pairing, you're going to have failures also. I don't think it's anything against the technique or the concept.
And if you guys weren't pair programming, you'd be much less productive, you think?
Oh yeah, I think we've gotten a hell of a lot more done a lot quicker in the projects that we've done when we've done pair programming. I've tried pair programming with other people where I am right now, and some people works fine with, some people there's no way I can work with them like that.
Right. But we can absolutely see that there are times when he's coding and I'll say that's not going to work, and then he takes a second look at it, and we catch bugs that would have been in the code way before we get to the point where we even have to test it just by having a second pair of eyes.
Wow. Rory, you had a question?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Mark, I just wanted to say hi. It's cool to finally get to talk to you, in person.
Yeah, he's a
Mark
big
and I have been
fan.
communicating over email for a while, yeah. And two, now, all methodology questions aside, here's something else that's been on my mind since the first time I ever heard pair programming mentioned, and it's how do you get management to let you take 4 eyeballs and stick it on one set of code, right? Because, I mean, in this day and age, like when people are kind of scaling back, well, actually, it's not so bad anymore, but there's still going to be budgetary issues and people raising eyebrows and things like that. How do you sell this to management?
You don't tell them.
Yeah.
That was going to be my answer.
You get together, and
we're just looking over each other's
wind
stuff.
up at each other's cubicles, and
Right.
you're working together, and you're both being productive. Management doesn't necessarily know that this is why you're being more productive. I don't know if that's the answer everybody wants to hear.
We're not spending 8 hours a
Management
day.
can sometimes be. Management can be so screwed up. They're willing to bet that if you said you were on a coffee break instead of saying you were coding together, that would be okay. So,
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
There are guys that if they see us together in the same cubicle, they're like, why are you wasting your time? 2 of you doing one thing.
Right.
But, it can be actually with 2 of you, instead of each doing one, the 2 together can be doing 3 things. It's
You're saving on hardware costs at that point.
There you go.
I want you guys' insights. What kind of personality doesn't work? Programmer persona doesn't work in pair programming.
The person that
The prima donna.
Yeah, that doesn't want to admit anything. That person doesn't work.
Right.
When I first started doing this, I was very much like those guys. I had another programmer that I'd worked with before, and one of us was on the keyboard, and the other one of us was on the mouse, and we were just kind of without really even talking, knew exactly where the other one was going. So in those cases, it works really, really great.
Right. It's almost like a jam session.
Yeah, it is.
2 guys, playing the same instrument, and it can work really well with 4 hands on a piano. Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't always have to be 2 coders either. You can get a QA person and a developer paired programming.
Or a percussionist.
I could use one right now.
A QA person. How about a business analyst?
Absolutely. It doesn't work when you get a QA person and a business person, though. One of them has to be a programmer.
One's got to go.
Right.
All right, guys.
you guys are all serious about one hand on the mouse and the other person on the keyboard?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We did it. And actually, when we first started doing this, I hadn't touched Java in quite a while. And the first day of the class was totally in Java. And both of us had been working quite a bit with C#, so we just went for it. And, I had the mouse part of the time, and he had the keyboard. And
do you guys do that with a mouse and a keyboard?
We've done it.
We've stepped on each other like that sometimes.
Does that work?
We're doing copy and paste, but that's...
Sometimes you can really fly doing things that way. But
yeah.
I think you have to have been working together for a while, in order to get that to go. Yeah.
But you can really actually, when you're doing paired programming, and I think this is where Kent Beck and some of the other guys were going with this, Scott Ambler or whatever, when they talk about this, the power of paired programming is the fact that if you've got 2 developers there that are synergizing on what they're doing and really understand what the other guy's doing and where we're going with that, it is like a jam session in the fact that you can just start really playing off of each other's ideas, and you start doing some code and you think, no, we need to refactor that, in the fact that, this function's doing 3 or 4 things, and we really want that to be just a single-use responsibility function. So you pull out the subordinate code and just make that where it used to be a function call.
Yeah.
And pull that on down and and basically that's what refactoring is all about.
And you know what? That sort of takes balls, doesn't it? I mean, you come to this point in your program where you have to refactor and you say, geez, I got to do. It's like you got to put everything you were thinking on the stack and then dive in there.
Right.
But if you've got somebody saying, yeah, that's definitely the way to go, you sort of, you're like,
In some ways, it really compresses the whole process where you have analysis, design, coding, and testing happening all at once with two brains, making sure if you're both agreeing, then it's probably right. If there's a disagreement, it makes you look at it again. It's like an iterative process that's happening all at once, with a few minute cycle instead of even in XP they talk about, iterations over, hours or days or weeks. This compresses it down so it's happening immediately. And when the two of you agree and you can go on, the chances are that you've got something right and a right to go on.
Cool. Well,
I wanted to mention one thing. The secret sauce in a lot of this is the fact that your manager or the person that's running this project has to believe in this or at least be willing to give it a shot.
That's something Sam Gentili said about, as he said, extreme programming. We love you, Sam. That it's really true is that everybody in the business process, upper management, really has to be signed off. And everybody, in fact, not just management, but the developers, everyone has to believe in it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's kind of like religion in a way.
It's a wild proposition, and it's coming from the developers, right?
Right.
So,
and what the hell did they know?
Roy didn't hear that.
Right. Well, you show up one day and you say, well, here's what we want to do. We want to write all our stuff up first and test it this way. We want to all program it together. We want to go in the same cubicle, and he's going to drive the mouse, and I'm going to do the keyboard. They'd look at you like you're crazy.
Right, and they say, okay, that's fine, but where's the project plan telling me when your end date is?
Yeah.
Right. Where's the spec?
Well, guys, I hate to interrupt a good thing, but we got to pay the bills and listen to some music, so stick around, and we will be right back in Two Shakes of a Lamb's Tail. Hey, Carl here. We have some room in our July class and our August classes. July classes, August classes. And I just wanted to put in a plug for good old New London in the summertime. Man, this is a great time to come to this class. The food is great. The town is cool. It's pretty hip. There's a lot to see and do in the area. You got the Mystic Seaport. You know, you got the Mystic Aquarium. You got Ocean Beach. You got the Nautilus Museum, the first nuclear submarine. You got all sorts of... What'd you say? The casinos. Yeah, the casinos. Foxwoods Casino and Mohegan Sun Casino right up the street here. Got the Coast Guard Academy here. That's kind of fun. Rocky Neck State Park, some beaches nearby. Man, it's just a great time. So, bring the family and hang out for a week. Eat well, learn some code, relax, and it's a great time. Check out our classes at www.franklins.net, and you'll be glad you did. Shout out to our sponsor at Data Dynamics. One of the guys in the class asked me today, so what do you recommend for reporting? And my answer is, well, if you have great big enterprise reports to do with lots of clients and you need a server to handle the load, use SQL reporting services. But if you just want some simple reporting to just embed the reports into your assemblies and your applications, whether they're web applications or Windows applications, that have all the power of the reporting tools of the day that you need, nothing better than ActiveReports.net from Data Dynamics. Not only is it great, easy to use, and powerful, all managed code, but it isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg either. Check them out. They're my favorite reporting tool, ActiveReports.net, up at www.datadynamics.com. And I thought I'd take this opportunity to play a little tune in the studio here. I haven't done this in a while, and this is an old traditional American song, a hobo song, as I like to call it, called Big Rock Candy Mountains. One evening as the sun went down, the old campfires were burning. Down the track came a hobo hemming, and he said, "Boys, I'm not turning. I'm headed for a land that's far away, beside that crystal fountains. I'll see you all this coming fall in the Big Rock Candy Mountains." The Big Rock Candy Mountains, it's a land that's fair and bright, where the handouts grow on bushes and you sleep out every night. The boxcars all are empty, the sun shines every day. Oh, the birds and the bees and the cigarette trees, Rock Rice Springs where the wang-doodle sings in the Big Rock Candy Mountains. The Big Rock Candy Mountains, all the cops have wooden legs, the bulldogs all have rubber teeth, and the hens lay soft-boiled eggs. The farmers' trees are full of fruit, The barns are full of hay. Oh, I'm gonna go where there ain't no snow, where the sleet don't fall and the wind don't blow in the bay. Rock Candy Mountain. Oh, the big Rock Candy Mountains. Not a place at all. Just another state of consciousness. Just a design on the wall. The big Rock Candy Mountains. You never change your socks. The little streams of alcohol come trickling down the rocks. And once you get there, find there's nothing much to do, but there's a lake of stew and whiskey too, and you can paddle on around it in a big canoe in the big Rock Candy Mountain. Yeah. Let's hear it for American music. Yeah, we like that stuff. You guys still out there?
Hey,
We're here.
All right. Does Carl take requests? Hobo theme, King of the Road. Yeah, that'd be another show.
Metallica?
Wait a minute. Let me get my fuzz box. Thank you. So where were we before we were so rudely interrupted by all this music and advertising and stuff? Anyone?
Well, we were talking
Bueller?
about...
Sorry,
Seems
go.
to veer to XP, Extreme Programming.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you were. I think we were kind of flowing through a thread of, is it just a fad?
Right.
And if we can take it down that path for just a minute, there's a whole bunch of articles and books showing up on test-driven development just all over the place, including one that's been out for about 2 months called Test-Driven Development in Microsoft.NET, and it's by Jim Newkirk, who had a lot to do with the NUnit port from JUnit.
Okay.
And the nice thing is that a lot of the test-driven development books will only take you so far. They'll start out with like building a stack and teaching you to build a test based on that stack. And Jim does that as well. But the nice thing is that after he gets done with that, then he takes you into a short chapter on refactoring. And then it's like, okay, well, where do we go from here?
Right.
Okay, the next thing is okay, let's build a real project. And in this case, it's a music database and eventually accessing that through web services. So he ties in a lot of difficult concepts like test-driven development with a database and ADO.NET and how do you do it?
Yeah.
And then the next one is, test-driven development with web services and how do you get started on UI testing and all sorts of different things that just make you go, okay, now I can see how I would actually use this in a real project. So
Yeah. There's some other books out there. Peter Provost has a book, Test Driven Development in .NET, right?
Uh-huh.
Benjamin Mitchell has a blog where he does, and he's a guest coming up here pretty soon.
Right. Daryl Norton has a blog as well that has just some huge TDD resources. And another site that's just started up not too long ago by Jeff Julian is called the .NET Book Club.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's .NETBookClub.org. And the book this month is the Test-Driven Development book with Jim Newkirk. So check that out if you get a chance. It's some good stuff.
That's interesting. We'll put some links up here. How about Will Scott and James Newkirk? That's the book you were talking about, Test-Driven C#. Is that the one?
No, this is a new one. It's by Microsoft Press. It's just only, like I said, it's only been out.
That's an article anyway. Okay.
Yeah, that's from MSDN. That's a great one to get started. If you go to MSDN and do a find on test-driven development.
We'll add a link to it too.
That article should pop up. Yeah, and that's a great way to get started because he kind of those guys summarize it in a very very cogent manner.
Cool.
Much unlike what I'm doing right now.
No, you're doing great.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really enjoying this because we've given a little lip service to NUnit and testing, but we really haven't gotten into it like this. So I'm really enjoying this.
So another question, just a common thing that we seem to be asking whenever someone comes along and talks to us about a particular methodology is, are there any like size limitations? Is this going to not work for projects of certain sizes? Because I've seen this done. I've seen unit testing done, for example, on very small projects where it took longer to write the unit tests than it would take to even test the thing by hand, right? I mean, it seems like there should be limitations to this. Is this something that's going to work better for medium to large projects, or where would you use this? Would you use it everywhere?
I budget about, if I'm writing something, if I'm working on a task, I'll budget, 50% of my time for whatever I budget for development, I'll budget it for testing as well. I'll just double it.
Yeah, that sounds what I would do too. That sounds about right to me. So.
Now, but it can
Does it
get
sound right
crazy.
to your manager, though? That's the question.
Right.
Well, they double it anyway, right? If they're a good manager, they double the developer's estimates anyway.
So this is what extreme programming is all about, he said.
Well, one of the other things that extreme programming does is they take your estimates and what you actually did in the first iteration, and they figure out a multiplier, and then they use that for, how much you can reasonably do in the second iteration.
Yeah.
Right, and as you go through these iterations, then you see what you've just done in the previous one and so on and so forth, and you get what's called velocity going with the project. And so your estimates start to get better and better on that project because you've seen in a microcosm what you've done.
Right.
And that's really how we try to run our projects.
Interesting.
So somebody asked if they're using NANT for this project. The project I'm using right now to do that, NANT is a product for doing the build server, or to doing an automated build outside of Visual Studio. And the answer is they are not. They're using Ant because they've got some non.NET code to be building as well as part of their big build. Mm-hmm. But I have used projects with Ant very successfully as well, integrating NUnit right in there. And it generates some nice, sexy HTML reports with green bars and red bars and nice, cool stuff.
Cool. Right. And, this is a good time to actually pause and do a segment on the show we like to actually call, actually, the Linux Vulnerability of the Week.
Hello, Mr. Bull. Let's you and me fight.
You guys like that one, huh? And we're not saying who's droopy and who's the bull in that case. But anyway, we like to do the segment to give equal time to the Linux zealots who say that Linux doesn't have bugs and Microsoft does. And in fact, we've been discovering a recent trend here. Not recent, but we've recently been discovering a trend, actually, that's been there from the beginning, that a lot of the vulnerabilities in Linux systems have to deal with buffer overflow vulnerabilities, things that the CLR and even Java, for that matter, take care of. So I'm not even going to read the details of these. Just listen to a couple of these that happened this week, and most of them happened today on the 10th. They're all from today, as a matter of fact. Debian CVS buffer overflow vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Fedora 2.1 Squid buffer overflow vulnerability. Fedora 2.1 Squirrel Mail multiple vulnerabilities. Gen 2 had multiple vulnerabilities in CVS, which may allow an attacker to remotely compromise a CVS server. Gen 2 Apache buffer overflow vulnerability. A bug in mod_SSL may allow a remote attacker to execute remote code when Apache is configured in a certain way. Another Mailman password leak. Mailman contains a bug allowing third parties to retrieve member passwords. That's bad. That's really, really bad. And Mandrake has K-sysmoops insecure. K-sysmoops? All right, Jeff, explain that one.
It sounds like a cereal.
It comes with a CD of Linux in it, right, in the box. Insecure temporary file vulnerability. Again, from 6/10/2004, Mandrake, Squid buffer overflow. Need I go on? There's several more of them, and they're all from today. So, anyone who says Linux doesn't have bugs is smoking crack, and Droopy said it best.
Hello, Mr. Bull. lets you and me fight.
So, I just wanted to say, in light of all the Linux vulnerabilities and everything, and just keeping true to this whole we're not picking on anybody, I don't think we mentioned last week on the show that Mono Beta 2 came out.
No, we haven't. We didn't. We're waiting for Mono version 1.0 before we celebrate. But what's new in Beta 2?
This is still cool. I mean,
okay,
it's just, we're just basically getting like the next beta, and this is the last stop, if I understand correctly.
Did you download it? You checked it out? What's it all about?
I haven't done this one yet. I haven't gotten it up and running yet, but
cool.
I am planning on checking it out. So
well,
Miguel
Diacaza said he would be a guest on the show when it comes out, so look forward to that. That's going to be a good show. I'm very excited about Mono. I mean, I don't pick on Linux, so what I pick on is zealotry. So
yeah, exactly, yeah. Right.
I love Linux. Somebody's going to sample that and get me in trouble.
Well, there was so much silence around it.
I know, it's like
too perfect.
I love Linux. I love Linux. I love Linux. Jeff's going to go nuts with that. All right. So anyway, cool. You guys have had obviously a lot of success with not only end unit testing but other things in extreme programming. What are some of the other aspects of extreme programming that we haven't talked about? We talked about pair programming, unit testing, several things. What are some of the things that we haven't talked about you think are cool?
Well, there's mock objects. These are objects that are just like the real objects, but
that's what you get at a Chinese buffet, right?
Right. You want to be sure that nothing's gonna really distract from the test, if you will.
Okay.
So like if you're trying to hit a database or hit a web page or throw something to another, a lot of functionality that maybe doesn't exist yet, you can mock that up in just an object that will return something that would be representative of whatever the real object would be.
Sounds like
so for example, there's a whole series of .NET mock objects out there that allow you to mock up like the system.data dataset and those sorts of things. So the functionality, so you don't have to have a lot of dependencies on it, but you can still test that functionality and then drop it in later as you need.
So I've heard you talk about code coverage, but I'm not quite sure what it is. I guess this has something to do with highlighting your code in the IDE or color coding code that ran or something.
You run your full suite of tests, and then you go and look at the code and say, "Hey, my test didn't execute this line of code. Why not?"
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right, and so what that allows you to do then is make sure that you're not going to miss something in your testing.
Right.
Yeah, and some crazy managers.
I can see that being useful all over the place. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's really cool.
It's useful, but people can take it too far, right? I mean, you get managers will say, "Well, you can't check in any code unless you have 100% code coverage."
Sure. Right. That's the same manager that said last month, we'll give you $5 for every bug you find.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the question you have to ask, if you run every line of your code in your test pass, does that mean you've actually fully tested the system? And the answer is no. I mean, you can come up with lots of different scenarios where you maybe executed every line of code, but you didn't put in assertions to really check to see that the values coming back were accurate or not.
Mark and Joel and I were talking this morning, I think it was before lunch, and we were talking about the show with Rocky Lotka where, I was asking him if, because one of his reasons that he doesn't like data sets is because they're just open and developers can just get in there and muck around with things without going through proper interfaces. And I said, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, somewhat naively, is this really a problem? Can't we just get together in a code meeting and say, hey, don't go there? And if somebody checks in code, where they're accessing the data set, can't we raise a flag? And he laughed. And, and I heard the laughs around the world, from that question. And because obviously I haven't worked on, big team software projects. So, I've done lots of smaller projects. So, and I heard the laughs around the world, and one of the guys and Joel and Mark here were saying, yeah, definitely, you want to restrict what developers can do because they'll use any means necessary to get in there when they shouldn't be. And I said, so, and they brought up a good point, and this is what I'm getting to, that they actually came up with a system that might work, which is financial penalization. We dock you $100 for every flagrant violation of our development rules. And I said, yeah, now that's something I can live with, because if you got, like a team, you're all working together, you're supposed to trust each other, and you have these rules, and if somebody breaks the rule, $100 out of your pay. That could work.
Yep.
That would definitely enforce standards, wouldn't it?
But then people would just be arguing the whole time about whether they actually broke the rule or they had a really good reason.
Right.
The committees and grievances and filings. And
yeah, that would open up another big can of worms. But
yeah, and forget the $100. You'd spend thousands just on the argument.
Absolutely, yeah.
Would that be American or Canadian?
Who wins there? Hey, we're getting close.
So if there was one book that VBNet, let's try VBNet developers should get for test-driven development. This book by Newkirk and Vorontsov, test-driven development in Microsoft.NET. Is this like only C# or is it VBNet too, or is there another book that VBNet programmers should get?
Really, I don't really think that there is a test-driven development for VB.NET out yet. I don't know of any books out there right now.
Because, John, that's your language of choice, right?
Right. I do both. I like, given my druthers, I'd probably do things in VB.NET. But yeah, there's nothing out there yet. So, Carl, you want to get out? You want to get together after the show and build a book on? No,
I think John should write it. I mean, he's obviously got the death wish. I mean, he's got the panache for writing. So.
There we go.
Can't you just port Jim's book?
There you go. Run it through the C# to VB.NET converter, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's really, there's some different blog entries, and but there's nothing really out there right now.
There's a couple of good places to look if you're looking for samples of good unit tests.
Yeah, there you go.
And one of them is NUnit itself. NUnit comes with unit tests to test itself.
Right.
So, you want to talk about eating your own dog food. There's a good example. Also, some of the new patterns and practices application blocks coming out of Microsoft PAG.
Man, those guys are cranking them out, aren't they?
They're cranking out tests for their stuff, too.
That's good.
Good. Yeah, they're actually, Barry brings up a good point. In the sample code for NUnit, there's a VB.NET sample. There's one to get started on, and there's one called Money, which is fairly good, and that's a good way to get started. And in fact, actually, I think I'll do I'm inspired this weekend to do a test-driven development article in VB.NET with VB.NET examples, and I'll put it on my blog this weekend. So.
Okay, good.
So John, how does NUnit or test-driven development differ in VB from C#? Is there a difference?
Really, it's mostly the attributes themselves, and instead of doing square brackets, you really do angle brackets. Other than that, it's really it's really a matter of syntax. From what I've seen, NUnit works the same in both ways. I mean, it's just a framework.
Yeah.
There's been some banter going on in the chat room there about option strict on versus option strict off.
Turn it on.
Turn it on.
Absolutely.
Turn it on and leave it on. Option strict is a good idea. It's not just a good idea; it's the law.
Yep.
Okay, exactly. And I don't know why. And for those of you on the VB.NET team that are listening, please turn it on by default.
That's what I told you guys the first day, right? Let's turn on option strict.
Well, just to throw a wrench into the gears, because I'm in the option strict on category too. But John Lamb, a guy that I work with now, just joined Object Sharp. He's an option strict off fan.
Is this John Lamb, Lam?
Lam. His website is iunknown.com.
Like he was the Intellect guy and wrote
books.
Yeah,
he was Intellect and Developmentor.
He's an option strict off guy?
He's actually new to VB, right? He's sort of falling in love with VB now.
Well,
that's his kind of language of choice now.
Really? Cool. I didn't know that.
He's an option strict off guy now. And he's got a few reasons, and I'll let him defend it, on another show, but one of the ideas is that because he has lots like this loose referencing, right? So he can call methods on objects and those methods don't exist. Right. Which, if you think about it, it eases a little bit of the friction on doing test first development because, if you write a test that fails, well, it's actually not even going to fail. It's not even going to compile.
Right.
Or if you create an object that doesn't exist, or you call a method on an object and that method doesn't exist, that won't even compile. Right.
Do we really want to write code like that, though? I mean,
can you actually use an Underwood, 1930s typewriter to do it as well?
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like
I'm not going to defend where he goes, but
it's like
his counter is I've got NUnit tests for everything, so I know it works.
He probably just thinks of his design and then I'm thinking. There it is.
He's Uber cowboy. So.
Right. Yeah.
So it works for him. So
Yeah. Who else is whose weblogs are you reading these days, John?
I'm reading Jim Newkirk's weblog a lot. John Box.
Okay.
Let's see who else. Jeff Julian. Those are
Barry
Joe on
Gervin's, right?
software. Barry Gervin's. I read Barry Gervin's blog all the time.
Barry Gervin. Do you read Barry Gervin's blog too?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I also hang out at IUnknown.com and
Right.
Actually, I read the comments in my blog. I can't believe how many comments I get on my blog. I have a blog thread that's got it's like a news group. It's got like 50, 60 messages in it the last time I looked. Just one entry.
What's testdriven.com all about? And forgive me if you already mentioned this. I can't remember.
Testdriven.com is a website that really just deals with different aspects of TDD, and they've got forums on there where people pretty much do celebrity deathmatch with various topics with TDD. So it's kind of just a portal for that people kind of are for the community, if you will, or one of them. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
I'm looking at something called Production Grammar.
Oh,
Do you know anything about this?
that's Jonathan DeHalleros.
Yeah, that's a part of MB Unit. I haven't played much with MB Unit, but
What is that? Let me go to the link and maybe I can describe.
MB
it to
Unit's
people.
an alternative unit testing framework. By the way, that guy who wrote that just got hired by Microsoft too.
and it's lower in carbs too. So than the traditional N unit. So
You could say that about the site because it's all in light blue. You know, how,
Right.
like low carb is now light blue
it's
for
more
some
like
reason.
periwinkle, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, maybe periwinkle. I don't know. What does Rory think? What do you think, Rory? Is it a
I haven't actually looked at it. I'm still daydreaming about code coverage, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
I was actually thinking about how absolutely fabulous it would have been for a million different debugging scenarios that I could think of.
So in that company that you were working for, Rory, do you think they could learn from listening to the show? That when you were here, the big
It's
company.
tough. I mean, it's oh, you mean when I was out on the East Coast?
Yeah. Or are
No,
they
that-
just like too far?
No, XP is not something
It wouldn't work for
that
them.
would fly out there. I mean, it
Okay.
would fly about as well as a penguin, right? I mean, it'd have wings, but it just kind of knows. I mean, it's not because they're capable. It's just because the mentality isn't there.
Right.
And as long as the penguin didn't have buffer overruns, right?
That's true. I really think that's a valid argument against Linux. That it's the managed
Windows
code
has the same
aspect.
problems, though. I mean,
Sure, it
people are
does.
still writing C++ code for Windows.
Oh, okay, but managed code does not. So,
But you have managed code on Linux too. You can write stuff in Java.
well, there you go. So that's a plug for Mono.
There you go.
And Mono, Java Mono.
Right.
Mono
iPhone.
mono.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Some other resources, Carl.
Sure.
That you can get for example, like unit testing. There's a series on the Code Project. If you guys are familiar with codeproject.com.
Right. Yeah.
There's like a 5 or 6 part series on just unit testing, and it goes through several different things, even test patterns.
Yeah, that's Mark Clifton's article.
Right.
Great stuff.
Yeah, it's really good, and especially for the price. I mean, there's so many things out there, but I frequently point people who are getting started in test-driven development, say download NUnit. Now I'm saying buy a copy of Newkirk's book, and then also go out to these series of articles on Code Project because they're very easy. They're very easy reads, and then there's a lot of practical information in these 5 or 6 articles or so.
I'm actually there. It's very hard to find stuff on that site unless you do a searcher. Right? So is
Right,
this
and
an
I can
article
say-
or a series of articles or?
Yeah, I'm actually here. Are you there already?
Yeah, and we'll put up a link to it. But I see there's an article on advanced unit test, part 5 and part 1 through 5 or whatever it is.
Right.
All great articles.
Visual Test Studio. What's Visual Test Studio? That's
Visual
interesting.
Test
Yeah,
Studio.
I'm looking at a screenshot of a tool called Visual Test Studio, the Advanced Unit Testing Project.
Oh, I think isn't that? It's another
AUT.tigris.org.
NUnit derivative.
Wow, so this is pretty huge. I mean, there's a lot of people writing unit testing stuff.
Right, and that's actually no, I take it back. It's not an NUnit derivative. That's another MB unit derivative. But there are, getting back to that, this is not just a .NET or a Java thing. There's an XML unit, there is an HTML unit, there's an HTTP unit. So many different platforms now are embracing at least the concept of unit testing. We just released a unit testing tool for FoxPro called FoxUnit at foxunit.org.
Wow.
And so everybody, no matter what their platform was or what their technology they're using, they're starting to look at this and going, man, it really makes a lot of sense that I can write clean code. And now that I'm seeing a lot of these, whether you take XP to the bank completely or Scrum or any of these other types of agile methodologies, everybody's starting to agree on that. Hey, test or unit testing and test-driven development, there's some merit to that. And so, it's being validated on many different platforms.
Yeah. Huh.
Can we get back to the HTML unit testing?
Yeah, that's weird.
What is HTML? What would you test?
What's the test? That you don't have any angle brackets sticking out in the presentation layer?
Basically, you don't just have like an open tag and no close.
Yeah, that's what. Pretty much. That your angle brackets aren't inverted or anything like that. But basically, what that allows you to do is really. Those inverted angle brackets. Those are hard to fix.
It worked in Netscape 4.
Yeah. Basically, it allows you to make sure that everything's connecting up. So your class libraries are connecting up to your the controls that you're trying to work with. There's a variant of NUnit called NUnit ASP, and it allows you to go out and actually build tests using, like, for example, a data grid, and you can you instantiate the data grid on the page and fill it and make sure that it's filling the way you want to, and
make
those
sure
sorts
that
of
you're
things.
not using any obnoxious colors or anything like that.
Yeah. No marquee tag, no blinking tag. Right?
No neon colors, no pink, no.
Okay, so what about then moving sideways? What about XML? What about XML unit testing? What would you do there?
You're basically testing to make sure that your XML not only is well formed, but it's coming back in the form that you expect. I mean, it's another way. Some people, I was reading a blog not too long ago. I haven't actually used XML unit, but somebody's saying that they actually emit XML from a lot of their classes and then use XML unit to just run unit tests and make sure that, for example, the nodes are being created properly and, the attributes are showing up where they should be and things like that. So, it's just another validator.
Sure. Make sure you don't have any tags that aren't referenced or useless or whatever.
Right, because, a poorly formed XML document is everybody's burden, and isn't it good for the children?
Sure, but so it's sort of like an automated validator, like an automated XML validator. Like, you can wire it up so that it'll take a look at what gets spit out and then validate the XML and then notify you.
Sounds like it.
Is that essentially?
Yeah,
okay.
If it's along the thing is, if it's along the same line of the X unit, the other X unit derivatives, then it's the test fails, the test passes, and then you refactor. So you're obviously doing some sort of assertions to make sure that whatever you're trying to test is actually passing, not failing. Sorry.
To abstract it a bit, I mean, all of these different derivatives, they do the same thing. They validate the output of whatever it is they're testing. The only real difference, fundamentally, is they're geared to calling or consuming whatever technology or platform that you're testing. So,
right.
.NET, XML, HTML, whatever's emitting that output, what are the expectations? And sometimes XML can be validated with an XSD, but sometimes there's other stuff in there. You want to make sure that there's, exactly 4 elements. And
I'm thinking of how would you do test-driven development with XML? That'd be kind of tough.
Well, I mean,
and do we even need to? I mean,
yeah. Well, I think that the concept is valid. I mean, you have to be practical depending on the technology you're using.
Right.
If you have a set of tests that test your XML and you need to add a new node into it, that does something, the first thing you're going to do is go write a test that checks to see if that node is in the thing you're emitting already, and then it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Sort of another interesting angle on test first, though, on any of these platforms is you don't have to do it when you're actually doing development to begin with. You can do it when you're finding bugs. So if somebody reports a bug, you get users who say, I did this, I did that, I did this, and I did that, and it bombed, right? And how do you reproduce that? Well, one of the ways you can try to reproduce it is with an end unit test. So you write an end unit test that exposes that bug, and then you give it to the developer, and he can clearly see from the unit tests how it's exposed, and then he's got something to work towards as well. So that's another kind of derivative of test first coding is write your test to expose a bug.
Right.
With just really fast, as we wrap up here, what XML unit actually does for you really is it has a set of supporting classes that allow you to test the differences between two different pieces of XML, like a diff, the validity of a piece of XML, a transform outcome, XPath evaluations, which are sometimes tough to track down, and then just individual nodes. So they've already got classes built in that will allow you to do that functionality. So it's, once again, with any of these technologies, just like Barry said, it's, okay, what am I trying to test in the technology that makes sense to me? And
don't just do it for the technology's sake.
Right.
Well, you guys, we're about out of time. You have any last-minute calls to action or shout-outs that you want to give, plugs or anything that you want to say? John?
Sure. Shout out to Jeff and Robert who are listening right now. Guys, thanks for listening. And if you're listening out here, I can't recommend enough to go out and start taking a look at NUnit and test-driven development and prove this stuff wrong. Get in there and if you don't believe it, try it out and see, and you'll get hooked. At Vision Data, we're an agile type shop, and so it's the heart of what we do. So,
yeah, good. And Barry.
I'll actually paraphrase something that Jim Newkirk said at Birds of a Feather session that I hosted at TechEd a couple weeks ago, and that was you can't preach or lecture or evangelize test-driven development, and somebody will go, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and do it. It happened for Jim, it happened for me, it probably happened for John as well, and anybody else who actually religiously does test for first coding, and that is you do some unit testing, which maybe test last coding, and at some point you're going to think, well, I need to add something, and it'll just click to you that it'll make more sense to write the test of that first than it will actually write the code.
Yeah.
And when you start to do that, you may do it a little bit gradually, but at some point you'll go, you know what? If I hadn't have written that test first, I would have written my code entirely differently. I would have created a different API. The object would look totally different. How I did it would have been different.
Because you get it from the caller's perspective.
And from the caller's perspective, you'll just get it. And, you'll have an epiphany.
Awesome.
So, don't avoid unit testing because you don't like test-driven or you don't get it or you don't feel it. Do some unit testing anyway. I mean, it's valuable for the artifact of just having the test suite itself.
Good advice. All right. Well, John Alexander and Barry Gervin, thanks for being on .NET Rocks, and we'll catch up with you soon, I hope. And,
thanks a lot, Carl.
Come on back anytime.
Thanks very much.
All right. We'll see you later. Wow. What a show. And so are you have you been messing with NUnit at all, Roy?
I've looked into it. I snagged it for mono, and all the tests failed. there was some weird funniness going on underneath, and the thing just died.
I'm actually gonna look into it a bit more. I had heard of it, and we obviously it's obviously very cool, and that was good. I'm really glad we had those guys on the show talking about it. So, well, we don't have a namespace of the week this week. We just didn't get around to it, and we don't have any really good swag to give away. We're sort of running out. So this is a hint to Microsoft. If you're listening, send us some swag so we can give it away. Damn it! And well, on behalf of myself and Rory and the listening public and Mark and Joel in the studio, Jeff Maciolik on the sound out there, and Karen Caballero, who we think might join us again someday, but we're not sure. Thanks for listening, and what can I say? Keep on rocking and keep on using .NET. We'll see you. See you, Rory.
Later.